Hi, do you like to color but have a problem keeping your colored pencils, markers, and pens organized? Well, if so, I have a project for you. To make this project, you're going to need a piece of fabric for the outside of your organizer, a piece of batting or a piece of fleece, and a piece of fabric for the inside of your organizer. They're all going to be cut to the same exact dimensions, 18 inches by 24 inches. Once we have those 3 pieces of fabric cut out in the batting, we are going to fuse the outside of our organizer to our batting. We're going to set the lining aside for just a second and fuse the outer fabric to the batting with some spray adhesive, or you could use some pins. And then we're going to set this aside, and then we're going to work on the inside lining. For the inside of your organizer, you're going to need 2 pockets. So you're going to need 2 pieces of fabric that are cut 8 inches by 18 inches long. And then you're going to take each one of these pieces of fabric and you're going to fold them in half with the right sides out. So once you have your fabric selected, cut out, you've folded it in half, you've ironed it in half, we're going to take each one of these pockets to the sewing machine, and we're just going to sew a 1/4 inch from the folded edge. Just to finish this, each one of these pockets, we're going to take them to the sewing machine and just sew a 1/4 inch from the folded line. Once you've sewed on the folded edges of both your pockets, you now want to pin those pockets to your lining. So you're going to pin them so that the fold is towards the center of the fabric and the raw edges are lined up. Once you have the pockets pinned in place, we're just going to sew across the bottom edge where the raw edge is, about a 1/4 inch from the raw edge, just to hold the pocket in place. So you're just going to sew straight across the bottom edge of each one of the pockets. Now we want to find the center of our organizer and draw a line there so that we know where our center is. You can do that by just folding this piece of fabric in half and then marking it with a pen for your center line. I'm using a marker that comes out with water or comes out with an iron. Either one, it's invisible ink. So I've marked the center line of this panel, and then I have really thin colored pencils that I want to store in this. So I'm going to measure about an inch every inch out from the center line on both sides, and they're going to be my sewing lines for making the dividers and the pockets. If you have really thick pencils, or maybe you're going to store thick markers, you may want to come out an inch and a half or every 2 inches to sew your lines. Also, if you don't want to do a lot of sewing, you can definitely make the dividers in the pockets a little bigger and come out maybe every 2 inches.
So here in the video, you can see that I'm marking on the lining fabric, the white fabric. You don't need to mark on the center part of this. You just need to mark on whatever your pocket fabric is so that you can see to sew. And if you have a device on your sewing machine that you can set a guide, a laser light, or something like that, if you have a fancy sewing machine, you don't need to make all these markings. But for me, I don't have that, and it was hard for me to get an ink that would show up on the black fabric, so I am drawing the lines here just so you can see the spacing that I'm using.
When you're marking these sewing lines, you're going to want to stop about an inch and a half, maybe 2 inches from the outside edge, because you're going to be putting binding on this edge and you're going to be rounding the corners, so you don't really want to sew your dividers all the way up to the very edge of the fabric. Once you have all of your sewing lines marked, you want to go to the sewing machine and you want to sew from the bottom edge or the outside edge of this piece of fabric to the folded edge of your pocket, and either backstitch or tack stitch there so it's nice and strong. And you're going to want to sew on every line so that you have dividers in this organizer. Once we finish sewing in the dividing lines in our pockets, we're going to go back to that outside fabric that we fused or pinned to the batting, and we want to sew that fabric to the batting where the pockets are going to fall when we put this together. So really only on like the outside 4 inches of this piece of fabric. We just want to sew the fabric to the batting, and you can do it with straight line straight line quilting or free motion quilting, however you want to do it. Once you've sewed your fabric, your outside fabric, to your batting on the edges, like the last 4 inches, then we're going to layer all the fabrics together like we want it to lay. So we're going to put our outside fabric or batting and our lining with the pockets together, and then we're going to do some type of stitching in the center of this panel to hold it all together. And here I just did some free motion quilting, nothing special, just something to give it a little bit of a design to hold the layers together. Once we have all our layers sewn together, we just want to go around and trim up the edges a little bit in case your batting kind of squished out or things moved around a little bit. You just want to give it a little trim to straighten up the edges. Once my panel was trimmed, I decided that I wanted to curve the corners. So I picked an object from my house that was circular and a size that I thought was adequate, and I just traced the curve onto the corners. And it doesn't have to be any exact size, just whatever you think is appealing to you. Just trace a circular object and then cut the curve out with scissors or a rotary cutter.
And I curved all 4 corners.
To finish the edges of this quilt sandwich we have, this organizer that we have, you can make seam binding, and if you're a quilter, you know how to do that. For me, I bought this bias tape because it's just a quick and easy way to get it done fast. This one package will do the organizer, plus give you a piece left over if you want to use it to make the tie for the organizer. This is double fold, 1/2 inch wide. You can find it at Walmart or some other shops, and it comes in a variety of colors. This bias tape is folded in half, and what you want to do is you want to sandwich the layers of your organizer in between this and then sew it down to your organizer. When trying to work with all these layers, if you have fabric clips, they work out really well. You can definitely pin the binding in place to hold it in place, but it's easier if you have clips. And also glue works really well to do this binding. You can glue on the inside of the binding and then glue the binding to your fabric organizer, and then use fabric clips to hold it in place while the glue dries. And then it'll help you get all of this under your sewing machine and to hold the bias tape in place. Once your bias tape is sewn onto your organizer, you are finished this project and you're ready to use it. All you'll need is a piece of rope or some type of tie so that when you roll this up you can hold it together. You should have a piece of bias tape left if you want to use that as your tie. This worked out really well. I'm really happy with my project. I really hate searching for the color that I want when I'm using colored pencils through a whole pile of mess, and this way I can keep all my like blue colored pencils together and all my orange colored pencils together, and I can easily find what I want. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please consider commenting, liking, and subscribing. Thank you very much.